Hey. Clear. Hey, we're finally airborne. This little machine is just too much fun. This thing will fit in the back of a Prius. I can drive anywhere, just take off in just a matter of a few feet and float up in the air on nice calm evenings or mornings. I mean, this is just like living the dream. If you look on my screen on my phone, every now and then you can see a number. The upper right hand corner, it shows my altitude above the ground. The other one's the altitude above sea level. So at about 250 feet, I'm going to turn crosswind and head west. This thing is just so much fun. It's probably the most fun you can have on a two-stroke engine. Here I am just floating along. I mean, how cool is this? Look at the sunrise. We were already in the shade. It looked like the sun had set only a few hundred feet above the ground, and we are in full sun. Here's just a look of how small the landing zone looks. I mean, it is tiny from just a few hundred feet above the ground. But it's amazing how small it looks from the air. When you're up just, I'm at 330 feet right now. One of the questions I get asked a lot is, how high can you fly? Well, legally, I'm allowed to fly up to 15,000 feet. That's where Class A airspace starts. I can fly up to that. But anything above 10,000 feet, you're supposed to have oxygen if you're there over a half hour. So personally, my highest I've flown was the height of this little tower right in front of me. And I guess it's not a little tower. That tower, according to my calculations, is 2,020 feet. That's the highest I've flown. Another question I get asked quite a bit is, how fast will it fly? Well, this on this particular wing, and it has nothing to do with the engine. This has all to do with the wing that you're flying, and I'm flying a beginner wing. Basically, it's a UNA rated wing. It's the safest wing, boatiest, slowest wing that you can fly. And my speeds vary between 22 to about 29, 30 miles an hour, trim fully out. So it depends on where my trim set is. But then if I have a tailwind, I can move. And then, of course, it's all relative to perspective. Just a few hundred feet above the ground, it looks like you're barely moving. It looks like you're going slower than a golf cart. But when I get down really close to the ground, it looks like I'm just scooting. So it all depends on how high I'm flying, on how fast it feels like I'm going. But yeah, somewhere about 25 miles an hour is probably average. Another question that I get asked quite a bit is, what happens if the engine dies? Will I just fall out of the sky? And the answer is no. Actually, when the engine stops, I'm still under a glider. I'm still just gonna glide down to the ground. Obviously, I have to pick a gliding, a spot to land within my glide zone. And if I'm gonna overshoot it, I can just do some S-turns and still land on it, or some circles or something just to burn altitude, or we can do wing overs, like do pretty aggressive turns, and then I can just drop right down into a little spot. But if the only area I have to land is over woods, you'll see I'm always going to go a little higher, so I can either turn around, go back on the other side of the woods where I just came from, or I'll make sure I can glide over the top of it. So it's all, you always want to keep an engine out option. But no, we don't drop out of the sky. I just glide down to the ground. In fact, probably over half the time when I land, when I see I have made the landing area, I'll just shut the engine off and glide on down and land. It's no big deal. How long can I fly? Well, that kind of depends on how I fly. If the motor is just at cruising altitude on this big, boaty beginner wing, I can fly for quite a while. In fact, the gas, I've never run out of gas. It holds about 4.5 gallons of fuel. Is what my tank holds. And that will give me probably around 2.5 hours of flight time. But I've never used that because if I start early enough in the evening, it's still thermals, especially during the summer. The thermals will run even after the sun has gone down quite a bit. You'll still run into some thermals. So I don't fly that long. I wait until it smooths down a bit before going, and then it'll get dark before I burn up all the gas. So yeah, I'll probably never run out of gas as long as I keep my head on my shoulder and make sure I have gas before I take off. Okay, and what gas am I burning? Well, it's actually, I use 91 octane gas. So basically you use a premium gas and I mix it with a really good 2-cycle engine oil. But yeah, it's kind of like a chainsaw. It's just a 2-stroke. In fact, this motor in particular is upside down. So if it ever floods out, I can just turn the spark plug out and it lets all the gas out, the excess gas out, and then turn it back in and off I go. The problem is the spark plug, if it ever gets loose, it'll just fall out of the sky and then I'll have to come down to land. So yeah, it's a pretty simple gas mixture, gas and oil mix. I run at 1 to 40. I think the manufacturer recommends 1 to 50. I run just a little bit richer than they recommend, but it's been working well for me. Here my wife had called me and I just couldn't hear her for whatever reason. A lot of times I can hear her when she's talking, when she calls me, but for some reason tonight just could not hear or make out what she was saying. So she texted me and said, yeah, watch out for fireworks. There's fireworks everywhere tonight. And I was just kind of thinking about it. Like, well, the fairground's right up ahead and we got hundreds of people there with fireworks. Yeah, I might want to just stay away a little bit. It's got to be tempting to shoot a firework at me from the ground. So it's my life here at risk. I'm just gonna keep a safe distance from it. But man, just look at these clouds and the sunset. This is just amazing. I mean, where else can you get this experience from? It's just awesome. Another question I get quite a bit is, why do I fly barefoot? Well, honestly, the only reason is I have flip-flops on. After I take a shower in the evening, a lot of times I'll just slip in my flip-flops. And since I fly late in the evening, I'll have my flip-flops on, and I just don't want to take those up there, just in case one of them slips off and goes through the prop. So if you have a propeller behind, my propeller sits behind me, so anything I drop will just go right through the propeller. So my solution is just take them off before taking off, and I'm good to go. I'll put them back on as soon as I land. Here's the Fairgrounds coming up to my left there. And I knew this bar is always in the way of the GoPro. I can see right under it. So I decided to go all the way to the right and try to get an angle underneath it. That didn't work out the greatest. But I thought, oh well, I get to see it. The GoPro may not see it greatest. And it's kind of far away for it to pick it up anyway. And everything, when I'm up there in the air, everything just looks larger than it does on the screen. So this video really doesn't do justice. Alright, well there was the Fairgrounds. Now it's time to head back. I know I got some headwind coming on up ahead, so I'm gonna have to turn around and take the slow way home. But I thought, how about just going over a mile? My in-laws live over here on the next road, so I decided to just come on over and see what they're up to. So one of the airplane guys was saying, well, don't you just fall out of the sky when my engine quits. My glide ratio is like a 10 to 1. And airplanes have like a 30, 60, 80, 100 to 1. They have a lot better glide ratio. And here's the thing. They have a better glide ratio, but I think overall, even though they can glide down a lot better than I can, they're coming in way hotter than I am. So even though my glide ratio is much less than what theirs is, I feel like overall, it's still a pretty good glide ratio for the speed I'm going. I'm just not going very fast. So really, you don't just drop out of the sky. They're still coming down at a pretty good clip though. So can I go up or down faster? Well, with this engine and this ginormous wing that produces a lot of lift, and I'm 700 feet above the sea level, I can climb quite a bit faster than I can descend. I can climb around 900 to 1,000 feet per minute, and my descend is probably closer to 600 feet per minute. Maybe down to 4 or 5 depending on the conditions. But yes, I can definitely climb faster than what I can descend. How hard is it to fly one of these? Well, it's quite a learning curve. It's something that I've never experienced before. You know, you pull one side, you go that way, pull the right side, you go right, pull left, you go left, pull both and it stops, and that's how you flare to come in to land. The rest is all in your throttle and learning to read the weather and the wind. So it's not hard to learn, it's just a weird learning curve. Once you have it, it's pretty simple. And I can just stow the toggles up into these little clips, and I don't even have to have any hands-on controls at all if it's smooth. Here I'm coming up to my in-laws' house and just kind of buzzing overhead. I could see him down there. They weren't really looking, but I decided to try to turn around and buzz over their house a little bit lower. And on the way down, I realized how bumpy it is down low. So back up I climbed and headed on home. It was getting later. So this is at idle. You can see I'm not coming down really fast. Now turning like this will make the descent a lot faster, but just don't fall out. You just kind of float down. Keep your eye on the number on the right hand side of my phone there, the 194, 197. That shows you how fast I'm climbing right now. On a hot evening like tonight, the temperature still in the upper 80s. So I'm just not going to climb as fast as I will during the winter. But I still climb pretty good. I got plenty of power on the back and I'm not full throttle here. Talk about cost. How much does something like this cost? That's a pretty common question as well. Well, it depends. If you buy just a glider and you want to go paragliding, you can fly that way with between $3,500 to about $6,500, depending on the glider that you buy. But if you want a motor to, you want to add a motor to it, but you're okay with foot launching, well, that will run another $8,500 to about 10 grand for the motor and the backpack and the harness and all that. And if you add a trike, like I do, that'll add another $3,000–4,000. So it all depends on what kind of equipment you fly. This exact setup that I'm flying, some of it was new, some was used, some was I've had to replace every single part. I've already discussed that in another video. But on this particular setup here, I probably have around 15 grand in it. How dangerous is this? And this is a question that literally every single pilot will have a different answer to it. Because, quite honestly, about 99% of the time it comes down to the pilot himself. How crazy do you want to fly? Once you get comfortable with it, it is a lot more fun to fly low and buzz over stuff really close and doing barrel rolls and flips and pulling big ears and doing all kinds of stuff. You can do all kinds of stuff with this. Sats but if you just fly like I'm flying on a beginner wing, it's very, very safe. The only thing that could go wrong is equipment failure, wing failure. So if you don't do the inspections every 3 years, well, then it could fail, I guess, which I keep up with that. There's just nothing really to separate, or not a lot of stuff that can just fall apart. But it could happen, and it's a very unforgiving sport if something does go wrong. But overall, it's probably as safe as driving a motorcycle on the highway if there's no one else on the highway. No deer, no people on the road. That's about roughly in the same category as driving a motorcycle on abandoned roads. So what is my normal cruising altitude? That all depends on how smooth the air is. If it's smooth down low, I'll probably be pretty low in the bottom 200 feet. If the air is rough down low, I'll be up higher. So that generally dictates on how high I fly. Well, anyway guys, my GoPro SD card is full and the video just shuts abruptly. So I'll see you next time.